Good afternoon, everyone. This is Wim Bakens, Secretary General of CIB, and I will be your convener for the webinar 4 on urban assessment models, organized by the CIB W116 Student Forum. And good afternoon for the ones in Europe and Africa. Good morning, very early in the morning even for the Americas. Good evening for our people in Hong Kong and other places in Asia. Welcome. The objective of this webinar, of all the 4 webinars in this series, of which this is the 4th one, is to present state-of-the-art student projects from all over the world. By doing so, we create a basis for exchange and cooperation between students, those with a similar interest who respond to webinars or to presentations. We also allow other students and experts to ask questions and thereby support the validation of those presentations, of the thinking in the presentations. And we hope by all of this we stimulate those students to continue with their work and present them in this way. I am Wim Bakens, I will be your moderator, and the program for this 4th webinar, after my opening, Francis Wong of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University will give a short CIB introduction and will explain the concept of the CIB student chapters. Then we will have a keynote speech by a senior expert in this area of urban assessment, being Pekka Latti from Finland. After that we will have the 3 selected student presentations, respectively by Nico Tilly, by Marcella Sade, who will do that on behalf of a colleague, and by Pirous Nurian. After each student presentation we will have 1 or 2 questions by the expert. At the end, we will have a question and answer session that will be based on attendees asking questions, and I will moderate that through the WebEx chatbox facility. I will explain how that works in a minute. The technical host for this webinar is the CIB Secretariat with Ton Heijblom in charge. He has given the technical support to everything, he provided the invitations, etc. Do know that all presentations will be recorded. After the webinar itself, we will make that recording available, being a recording of the webinar as a whole, but also separate recordings for the separate presentations. For the presenters themselves, you can download and use for other purposes your own presentation. After this series, so after this last webinar in the series, we will provide a kind of a summary report, which will include links to all those recordings. And again, questions to be asked by the attendees also already during the presentations go via the chatbox facility. How does that work? When you logged in, you saw at the right bottom corner of the WebEx meeting page or meeting center, the chatbox facility. You see this logo that stands for the chat. If you type a question in that lower part and address it to me, this is a pull-down menu that you have to use, and select my name, I will receive it. At the end, I will collect those questions, I will summarize them, and I will challenge the presenters to give proper answers. Now, while you are looking at the presentation, like now, you see in the top middle of your screen an indication that says, in your case, you are looking at the presentation of. If you go over that box, a menu will appear like this. If you then click on the chat facility, the chat box will appear in your screen while you're still looking at the slide someone else shows. That's the best way to continue looking at the presentation, at the same time ask questions via me to the presenters. If you mention your name, I will repeat that. If you address a certain presenter, mention the name of that presenter in your question. And again, at the end, we will have the question and answer session that I will moderate. I hope it will work. To really start with the program. As indicated, there will be a short CIB introduction by Professor Francis Wong. Francis is from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. He is a member of the board of CIB, and in that capacity, he is the chair of the CIB Student Chapter Committee. Francis will give a presentation about that very concept of the CIB student chapters. Tom, can you make him the presenter? Francis, you are now the presenter. If you share your desktop, you can start your presentation on the CIB student chapters.
Okay, thank you, Wim. A good day for all of you. I'm Francis Wong. I'm a board member of CIB as well as the chairperson of the CIB Student Chapter Committee. And it is my pleasure to have this opportunity to share with you the functions and the activities responsible and taken care of by the CIB Student Chapter Committee. Firstly, I would like to show you about the key issues that I would like to cover in the next few minutes. I will share with you about the terms of reference of the CIB student chapter. I will let you know about the regional context for the student chapters at the different parts of the world. I will keep you informed about the development of the Sebastian Future Leaders Award, and also I will keep you informed about the upcoming event to be organized by the Student Chapter Committee, which is the Student Chapters Forum. The Student Chapter Committee was established in 2010, and the purpose is to encourage and to support the CIB student chapters at different parts of the world. It is a standing committee of the CIB board to which it reports. And the focus areas for the Student Chapter Committee including encouraging the maintenance and growth of the CIB student chapters, monitoring the activities of the chapters, and administering the CIB Sebastian Future Leaders Award, which is one of the key activities to be organized by the CIB student chapter. There are 4 regions in terms of coordination of the CIB student chapters. Region 1 including Asia and Australia, and for every single region there will be a contact person. For Region 1, i.e. including Asia and Australia, that I myself will be the contact person. Those universities and organizations within the umbrella of Region 1, including the Faculty of Construction and Environment, the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, of which I'm a faculty member, the Faculty of Architecture, University of Hong Kong, the School of Civil Engineering, Tsinghua University in Beijing, the Construction Technology Management Center, University of Technology Malaysia, the Faculty of Architecture, Planning and Surveying from University of Technology Merah, Malaysia, the School of Housing, Building and Planning, SAINS Malaysia University, and the Faculty of Built Environment Engineering from Queensland University of Technology in Australia. For Region 2, that is the universities and organizations in UK, the contact persons is Professor Les Rudolph from Salford University, and the chapters under the umbrella of Region 2, including the Research Institute for the Built and Human Environment, University of Salford, Faculty of Science and Engineering, University of Brighton, Department of Construction Management and Engineering, Reading University, Glasgow Caledonian University and University of Strathclyde, and also W116, the Law and Dispute Resolution, from the Working Commission-based student chapter associated with the University of Salford. For Region 3, which is including Europe and Scandinavian countries, previously the regional contact person was Andy van der Dubbelsten. However, Andy had recently stepped down from this position, and we are actually still looking for someone to replace Andy. So if any one of you who are from that region, from in Europe or in Scandinavian countries, and if you are willing to give the support to the student chapters, committees, activities, then please let me know. The universities and organizations within the region number 3 is including Faculty of Architecture, University of Eindhoven, the Netherlands, Department of Construction Management and Engineering, the University of Trent, the Netherlands, Center for Built Environment, University of Gao, Sweden, Department of Civil Engineering and Architecture, Technology, University of Lisbon from Portugal, Department of Architecture, Middle East Technical University from Turkey, the Department of Built Environment, Science and Technology, Polytechnic of Milan from Italy, Hungarian CIB student chapter, which is a country-based student chapter from Turkey. Region 4, including America and Africa, and the regional contact person is Professor Jack Davis from Virginia Tech. Universities and organizations under the Region 4, including Postgraduate Built Environment Region Research Chapter from Texas A&M University from USA, College of Architecture, Georgia Institute of Technology, USA, Department of Engineering and Construction Management, Pontificia University from Chile, South Africa National Student Chapter. It is also a country-based student chapter. I would like to keep you informed about the development of the student, about the Sebastian Future Leaders Award. For the award winner in 2011, that was the Hong Kong Polytechnic University CIB student chapter, and the project entitled Exploring Construction Industrialization in China, the Status Quo and the Challenges. And I'm happy to keep you informed that the project has been successfully completed, and the final report has already been submitted to CIB, and also it has been published as a CIB publication. For the 2012 award, the winner was the University of Salford CIB student chapter, and the project title is The Economic and Sustainable Impact of BIM's Alliance on the AEC Community and Society. The project is just started, and we will expect that the project team will have a presentation next May in Brisbane at the CIB World Building Congress. To keep you informed about the future activities to be carried out by the Student Chapter Committee. It is the first time that we are going to host a Student Chapters Forum that will be held in the morning on the 8th of May in 2013 at the CIB World Building Congress. So I hope that you can participate and come to Brisbane and to attend the Student Chapters Forum. The objective of this forum is really to strengthen the links between the chapters and to encourage joint scholarly activities, as well as to share the experience in organizing Student Chapters events. So that's all I'm going to report to you today, and thank you for your time. And if there's any question, I'm happy to answer. Back to you, Wim.
Thank you very much, Francis. Tom, if you can make me the presenter, this is all working great. Thanks. If people do have questions on the concept of the CIB student chapters, they can ask that by using the chat box facility, and in the end I will summarize those questions for Francis. Thank you very much, Francis.
Thank you.
The first presentation is the keynote speech, and every webinar we have one senior expert from the CIB community providing a keynote speech on the topic. Here Dr. Pekka Latti from VTT in Finland was to provide that speech. Pekka is a member of the CIB Commission W101 on spatial planning and infrastructure development. Worth mentioning because that commission is trying to collect sustainability assessment models and compare them. Pekka's presentation was to be about urban sustainability, urban assessment models. However, as you can see, I will present it. What happened, unfortunately, is that that Pekka yesterday was struck by the flu, and in fact he lost his voice. He is still with us. He can ask questions per chat box if that works. But I will try to do a short version of his presentation. We received both a short version, and I will show that, and a longer one. We will make the longer version available as a downloadable document for all attendees. At a given moment you will receive information that it is available, and I can recommend you to do so. What the presentation does is not only present but compare such sustainability assessment models in an interesting model that is presented in detail. It presents certain selected models in detail. It also presents you with a long list of selected recent publications on assessment models. So if you're a student doing work in this area, this is very worthwhile. I'll try to give his presentation, and I have to switch things a little bit. It works. The presentation, as said, is about urban assessment models and tools. Pekka presents various concepts, the different scopes and indicators, and talks about the visualization of urban sustainability. Let me see. He starts with stating that sustainability or eco-efficiency, or the different terms we use, are in fact extremely complex and encompass lots and lots of issues, aspects, criteria. You see a selection of those presented here. What he does, what he focuses on, is on urban metabolism, which is very much about the flow of materials, the flow of energy, the flow of about emissions and waste from buildings and related to the infrastructure. During the whole phase of, call it the lifetime of a building or an infrastructure, that includes pre-construction, construction, operation and use, and post-operation, including demolition or recycling. To bring structure into that whole collection of issues, Pekka talks about the classical three pillars of sustainable development: social, economic, and ecological sustainability. But he also talks about the four imperatives of sustainable development: the institutional imperative, the economic one, the ecological one, and the environmental one. Those two approaches together bring structure into what sustainability can be. And we need that structure, we need the insight in how aspects are dealt with if we are to assess assessment models. Eco-efficiency, Pekka says, is a main criterion for urban sustainability, and in fact is about the quality of life at the cost of resource consumption and environmental harms. You see examples of what the impact of that definition is. The narrow approach of eco-efficiency is very much about urban ecosystems with carbon inputs and carbon outputs. Seems like an engineering approach, but it is, call it, the narrow approach. What you have to do, however, if you talk about eco-efficiency, is look at how urban ecosystems impact upon climate ecosystems. We do know a lot about that, at least we think we do. But what you also should do is look at how climate ecosystems impact upon urban ecosystems. And that link is far weaker. There we know far less. What we do know is that over the last what is it, since 1950, last 60 years, there is a huge growth in urban population. There's an urbanization now going towards 80% in certain countries. That means 80% of the people live in big or in cities. The impact you can see in terms of energy production, a huge increase and a depletion of energy resources, but also in terms of CO2 production. Now, this is about the listing and the comparison of 40 recently developed, known, and for a part applied assessment tools for urban eco-efficiency. You see them on the left. Where is that? Here. The list of 40, this is only the first page, and you see a number of criteria used to compare them. Whether they do include the area level or focus on buildings only or both. Whether they include social infrastructure or technical infrastructure, what the different indicators of eco-efficiency are. Now by this color scheme, and this continues on the next page, you see the 40 known urban assessment models, urban eco-efficiency assessment models compared. You see that there is a huge variation in scope, in coverage, and in focus. What it tells me is that, as for example a city planner, you cannot simply say I want to use this or that model. You really have to do a comparison. You really have to know how to use it, what to use it for, and then to look for the one that fits. I think this is a great comparison with many potential uses, and it's really worth downloading later on in a more detailed form. Pekka continues by focusing on 4 selected examples: BREEAM, LEED, Green Star, and CIB, and compares those in terms of the weightings they use, the information gathering, also in terms of third-party validation, if any, certification labeling, required qualification for assessment or for using the schemes, but also the costs included in using a scheme like that, and the number of units. And then he talks about the use in practice, the number of units certified using that scheme. You see the 110,000 or more times units for which BREEAM is used, of which by far most domestically, only 1,300 non-domestically. LEED, the second biggest one, and the smaller ones. And he talks about the availability of information. He also talks about the various components and how, let's say, their weighting in the different systems is. And you see the big differences here. You see that infrastructure weights for 45% of an assessment in CIB, but only 24% in BREEAM. It's not so that the one is better than the other, but one has to realize that those are very, very different. So if you want to use or select eco-efficiency assessment systems, use this comparison. Pekka presents a number of the selected schemes in a little bit more detail. I recommend you to go to the page where we list the recordings, where the full presentation with all those slides is available. CIB, City Sim, another one, and he talks about actual applications of some of these models in certain situations. And I'm going to that very, very quickly. Just one example. This is about assessment in Mengtao-Go, which is a regional plan in or near Beijing in China. You see, looking at the color scheme, green, blue, and let's say pink, whether a certain criteria like innovation, visual education, educative, etc., is more on environmental issues or economic or social issues. You see the distinction here. This has been used in that specific area. There are other examples. MEDCA. Here is the NILEM tool, that's by the National Institute for Land and Infrastructure Management in Japan. They did their own tool. They all present their outcomes somewhat differently. Here you see the different columns using a tool in PimWach. Here is the HICO tool that has been developed by VTT itself, another type of presentation again, and used in various situations in and near Helsinki that I know about. Here is a couple of slides I want to focus on a little bit. It shows you the tool and the impact of using that tool during the planning and design phase of an urban neighborhood. This is the Meri Rastila West Bank. It must be a Finnish river or something, where people developed certain general plans in different options. Used the HICO tool to test eco-efficiency and came up with options for alternatives. Very, very different. You see the impact of using a tool like that during the planning and design process. Based on the comparison of all those tools and a little bit of experience with actually using them, Pekka has defined a number of conclusions. I want to focus on a few. 2. The assessment process itself tends to be positively proactive, guiding the planner and designer towards more eco-efficient solutions. In other words, in support of design, it has a huge potential impact. 4. The use of the tool is rather easy to learn. He talks about a learning process of approximately 2 hours. That means that there is no real argument for a planner not to want to use the tool because he thinks it's far too complicated. But Pekka also says 5 tools need to be developed further. They need to be made more acceptable. They need to be made more reliable. They need to be based more on hard facts. Still, we need to do research and innovation to optimize this. And in addition to the tools itself, we need practical examples to convince policymakers, planners of the impact and the potential of those tools. Now, this is difficult to read. You can read it, but I will not go through the whole list. What I want to show you is a first part of a long list of selected recent literature about tools, about concepts, about applications, and about impacts of applying those tools that Pekka presented. In the recording, you will have this. Later on, you can download the whole longer version of the presentation, including this very long list. I recommend you to do so. On behalf of Pekka, I want to thank you for your attention. And on behalf of all of us, including the attendees, Pekka, I wish you all the best and a speedy recovery. Okay. This was the keynote presentation. It won't be possible to ask questions about this keynote, but if you do have questions for Pekka, you can send an email with a question to the CIB Secretariat, and we will have it forwarded to Pekka himself. After this keynote, and I hope I did you well, Pekka, we have a first presentation of a student project presented by Nico Tilly. Nico is of the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, and he will talk about how to make urban assessments relevant to local policymakers. Nico, if you are made the presenter, the floor is yours. Nico, you have to share your desktop and you can start your presentation. Nico, are you there?
Yes, I am. Where can I see share desktop?
On the top of your screen, you see a menu bar that says Event Center File Edit Share. And under Share, you see My Desktop. You found the Share option? This we cannot do for you. You have to tell your computer that all of us are allowed to see whatever is on your desktop. On the top of the screen, a small bar, menu bar that says Event Center File Edit, then Share, and under Share the option My Desktop. You have a problem finding it, Nico?
Yeah. It's not registered anymore, it seems.
What we can do is to take another presentation first, so Tom can give you some guidance on how to find that in the coming 15 minutes. Is that okay to you?
Yeah, okay.
Marcella, then we go to you. If I am made the presenter again. Okay. I can share my desktop, and that should be happening. My computer is responding very slowly. Okay, here we go. If I can introduce the second student presentation. Marcela Sade from the Universidade Federal do Espírito Santo, Federal University of the Holy Spirit, I think, in Brazil. She will do a presentation which will be about guidelines to establish urban eco-villages. That in fact is the topic of a PhD study of Flavio Januario José. Flavio is also with us. He can answer questions later together with Marcela, but Marcela will do the presentation. Tom, can you make Marcela the presenter? Marcela, if you share your desktop.
Can you hear me?
Well, we can hear you, and we have your desktop, and we have your presentation. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello all. I'm Marcela, and I'll be presenting Flavio's PhD research entitled Guidelines for the Development of Urban Eco-Villages. So, I'm sorry. So considering the negative consequences of the intense urbanization process, many groups decided to deal with the problem by denying the city and isolating themselves from it, forming some intentional communities seeking for self-sustainability. Today, however, many of these communities go through a certain deflation of their population due to migration of mostly young people to areas more culturally rich and diversified, mainly to those areas intensely urbanized that the previous generation tried to flee from. So which proves that isolation and self-sufficiency are not necessarily attributes of sustainable environments. As an example here in Brazil of something that actually worked, we have the Mato Dentro community, which, different from those mentioned failed communities, established itself close to 3 urban centers, allowing for mobilization of people and cultural exchange. So this community presents a balanced population growth. It maintains environmental awareness, economic efficiency, and overall a healthy social relationship with its members. And such a phenomenon represents a reference for the present research, for Flavio's research. More recently, however, some projects and investments stand out, which are specifically directed to dense urban areas. However, they aim to produce buildings and environments that usually utilize materials that come from socially and environmentally degraded systems, and that are usually evaluated by indexes that mainly take into account its energy efficiency, especially here in Brazil. So an example is Masdar City in the United Arab Emirates. It's a project that justifies itself as being entirely sustainable, but it presents the deficiencies of the early mentioned projects and also of the isolated communities. It denies the urban environment, and it's not accessible to everyone. So, considering what was said, Flavio's main goal in his research is to establish guidelines for the development of urban eco-villages through the improvement of knowledge regarding urban sustainability and bibliographical review, and also through examples of urban fragilities and solutions that are legally feasible. Also through experimental evaluation of his adopted methodology by building a sustainable urban environment for 50 families here in the city of Campinas in Brazil. Also, from the mentioned experiment, he aims to elaborate and group systemically guidelines for developing urban eco-villages. So his hypothesis is that it is expected that through practical and theoretical studies regarding sustainability in urban environments, through planning by taking into consideration the user's needs and the technical abilities of the producer of those built environments. And finally, through practical experiment, it is possible to define guidelines for establishing urban eco-villages as a reference for occupation of empty urban spaces, for requalification of already dense areas, or even for rural communities. So Flavio follows the constructivist grounded theory, and as a basic methodology being followed, he is performing theoretical research regarding the Brazilian law that is related to the experimental part of the study, and he's also searching for Brazilian and international references of experiences about developing sustainable urban environments. And another methodological step is choosing the location for the experimental part of the study, composing and organizing a group to form the eco-village through the constitution of 3 management tools that will cooperate for the sustainable balance. The Flor do Anhumas Institute that takes care of environmentally related subjects, especially regarding environmental education. The Eco-Village Members Association that represents the social relationships of the Eco-Villages group, and the Cajueiro Financial Administrator responsible for all the financial transactions. Some basic technical processes that are also being carried out are determined by the law that refers to land registration and encompasses the emission of municipal guidelines and project approval, of course, by the city hall. Also, some pilot house projects are being elaborated as examples coherent with the eco-village proposal. And finally, the guidelines for urban eco-villages are being established through the practical and theoretical development of his research. So as some preliminary results that Flavio got, he already chose the location for the urban eco-village. It's called Santa Margarida, the eco-village, which means St. Daisy in English. And as you can see here in the main picture, that's the project, and it's in the middle of the city. It's not an isolated area, as you can see by that satellite map. And some activities are already being developed in the eco-village. The houses are not yet built, of course, but the members already meet monthly and develop different activities there. So there's a social integration already. The pilot residences have already been suggested for the homeowners to have examples of what would be a coherent project for the eco-village proposal. And also he started defining the guidelines that define the requirements to characterize a project as an urban eco-village, and it's separated mainly in 9 parts. First, he defines what an urban eco-village is. It's a sustainable and ecological project characterized as a human occupation seeking the creation of models of sustainable life, respecting the characteristics of the region where it's located, and covering 4 dimensions: social, ecological, cultural, and spiritual, all combined to stimulate the community and individual development. He also defines that the urban project must respect the municipal guidelines in accordance with the municipal guiding plan. Every city here in Brazil has a municipal guiding plan, and it needs to be followed to guarantee project approval. He also defines that the developer of the urban eco-village must implement green urban infrastructure systems. He specifies them more thoroughly in his PhD research. He also predicts that some tax-related incentives will be given to those who choose to live or to build an urban eco-village. He defines what the residences must have, all of the houses, for example, pre-treatment of sewage, rainwater harvesting. The separation between houses must be done with see-through material. They don't want the segregation between the houses. Composting system, solar water heating system, and many others. The Homeowners Association also must be created after the project registration because it will guide all the social relations between homeowners and also between the developer of the project. And the homeowners must be aware of their responsibility regarding the community, following the obligations that are listed in the guidelines, but also some other recommendations that will enhance the eco-village's sustainable character. And finally, he allows for pre-existing projects or even already built areas to adequate themselves to the guidelines so that they can also be considered as an urban eco-village and receive all the benefits that arise from it. So this was mainly what we had to show you. In behalf of Flavio, I thank you for your attention, and we're both here available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcelo. Excellent. Thank you also, Flavio. A very clear presentation with a couple of new dimensions. What we have a question from Pekka Latti, our expert, but he did it via the chat box facility for Marcella. I want you to answer this, and then we go to the next one, and we leave a couple of other questions for the final question and answer session. Marcella, in the concept of eco-village, how would you define eco? Is there any universal content, or is it so flexible that you can define it always case by case? In other words, differently in Brazil and in, for example, UAE. Do you see problems in the flexibility? Marcela? Or Flavio?
Okay, I'm just going to translate it to Flavio, just a second. O Peca perguntou do significado de eco, se você acha que ele é sempre o mesmo, se você acha que ele pode ser definido diferentemente para diferentes países, por exemplo, no Brasil é uma coisa. O significado disso é flexível? Qual é o significado para você se você acha que é flexível?
Da palavra ecologia. Eu creio que ele tenha uma...
Can you make me the presenter?
O mesmo significado, porém com valores diferentes.
Considerando a cultura e tal. So Flavio just said that the eco from eco-village obviously stands for ecological, and he believes it's a main concept, but it is flexible when you consider different values within societies and communities, different cultural values mainly. So there are some different elements that mean different things for people in different countries, and that might make a difference on what it means for each country. That he's saying the project might be less or more integrated with local ecology, depending on what it means.
Okay, so it's a rather flexible concept with the possibility to include lots of local characteristics.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's answered the question. Thanks for the question, Pekka. Thanks, Marcella. We will come back with more questions later on. Thanks, Flavio. Also, we want to hear you too. We go to a next presentation, and I think we have to go for the third presentation by Pirous Nourian, also by the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, because Nico isn't with us at the moment. We lost connection. We'll try to get him back in time. Pirous will talk about walkability and the assessment of urban situations in terms of walkability. Nico, if Tom makes you the presenter, you can share your desktop and we will enjoy listening to you. Nico, Pirous. Pirous, you still know how to share your desktop?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure, we can hear you.
Okay, hello then. I don't find the icon you mentioned. I mean, it was... It was on the top of my screen, but it just disappeared.
The top of your screen disappeared?
No, the icon you mentioned. But once you made me the presenter, it disappeared. I don't know where to find it again.
Okay, on the very top of your screen.
Yeah, I found it. Okay.
Share.
Yeah.
My desktop.
Okay.
It works.
Okay. So, hello everyone, I'm Pirous Nourian, PhD researcher and instructor of computational design at TU Faculty of Architecture. In the next 15 minutes, I'll be presenting a part of my ongoing PhD research supervised by Professor Sevil Sarieldis. It is a computational model we have made for walkability assessment, which can be used in a computational design process like the one we have reported in a recent paper of us in an urban morphology conference, ESOF, at Delft. Our definition of walkability is the overall pedestrian accessibility of vital services within a neighborhood. It has two innovative aspects. One is taking account of topographic landscape in calculation of network distances, as well as the topological structure of the network. And the other one is the consideration of an intersubjective aspect of vitality of a neighborhood as the relative importance of places vital services are being provided. For measuring walkability, we have gone through several steps and we have dealt with a number of issues as follows. First, the street network topology, which is how the streets are connected to one another, and that's necessary for measuring the network distance. Second, the topographic features of the neighborhood landscape, and that is necessary for calculation of impedance of the network, or how difficult it is to walk certain routes, for instance. And third, the location of vital services as attraction point, and where people generally need to be close by, and the notion of vicinity and aggregation of distance measurements into a single walkability measure. And at the end, the relative importance of points, which attraction points, which results in a polycentric structure of the neighborhood. Okay, first of all, we need to have a solid basis for measuring the distance on the network. We have chosen the shortest path algorithm by Edgar Dijkstra, the Dutch scientist, as such basis. The shortest path is the shortest or the best path that one could take through a network from an origin to a destination. The best path available, of course, and like it is shown in these pictures, as you can see. So it is different if you choose different pairs of origin and destination. And according to this definition, we can have another definition as catchment radius. This actually brings about the other definition, which is the range of distance that could be traversed in all possible directions from a given point. It is called radius because the catchment enclosure will be a circle in case we take the Euclidean distance or the straight line distance between points. Here in this page you can see two different networks, rectangular and radial, and you can see catchment enclosures with the same radius in case of each network, one for the radial grid and the other for the rectangular grid, drawn from different centers. Notice that a catchment enclosure will only resemble a circle in case the origin is exactly located on the center of a radial grid, not otherwise. In general, the catchment enclosure can be intuitively perceived as the boundary which is delineating how far an agent could go if allowed to go in all possible directions for an equal range of distance. Okay, and finding the shortest path, which is needed for measuring the actual distance between points on a network, we need to attribute a cost or an impedance to every piece of network before running the algorithm. Here is the one which is apparently the most dominant one when it comes to walking a route. Simply its ups and downs. Well, it actually matters in which direction you're going to walk a route. For instance, in this picture, if you are to go through a one-way trip from left to right, for instance, you would only count the upslopes or the positive slopes, while for a two-way commutation-like trip, every piece of non-flat network counts and matters. So you need to consider that as the impedance. It has many details. I cannot explain it here in this short time span, but I'll write about it in a forthcoming journal paper. Okay, and to give you a sense of comparison to the actual influence of this impedance, I'll show you two calculations. First, distance between a pair of origin and destination points according to a shortest path, which is when we consider a flat landscape. It takes, for instance, in this case, 22 minutes of walking. And the same trip between the same pair of origin and destination points, when we consider a hilly landscape, takes 36 minutes. And you see, this is something we all intuitively know, of course, but it is important to have a method for its automatic calculation. I should let you know that such a measurement is not available even on Google Maps yet. By the way, I forgot to tell you that according to a typical pace of walking for human beings, we can easily interchange spatial and temporal measures of distance with one another. say for instance a 5 kilometer per hour normal speed of walking, approximately, if we take that, one could walk every 80 meters or so in a minute. So this is the way. Okay, here you see a typical imaginary neighborhood. It is chosen as an imaginary neighborhood because we need to be able to do it in any given neighborhood, which is modeled in terms of it's a street network and urban box. And here you can see how network distances are measured from a few attraction points on the network. These attraction points are arbitrarily chosen by the user as the location of vital services. We can show the distance of all locations to an attraction point in a colored gradient map as shown in these three pictures, in which the bluer the color, the farther the distance, respectively. And we can, of course, find the catchment enclosures around the attraction point on the network. Then this question arises, how close are we to an attraction point? As you can see, we need an aggregate measure of distance, as in every point. So far we have found 3 distance values towards 3 attraction points. So we need a way of aggregation. So here you can see 2 distinct ways of aggregation of results. We have named them vicinity and walkability, respectively. Our measure of vicinity indicates how close a point is to any of the existing attraction points, whether point number 0, point number 1, or point number 2. Whereas walkability indicates how close a location is to all attraction points on average, to all of them on average. These two imply quite different meanings. When the points have the same kind of importance, we can use the vicinity measure as it would be all right just being close to any of the attraction points. While in case there are different kinds of services being provided in these locations, and one needs all of them to be reachable by foot, we need to take account of walkability measure. And of course, in aggregation of these measures, it matters how important one attraction point is considered to be as compared to the others. When all points have the same relative importance, we get into a map like the one below, and when the user specifies an unbalanced set of weights or relative importance figures for the points, we get into biased gradients of walkability, respectively. For instance, in this case, point number 0 has the greatest weight of importance. Here, the point number 1 has the most importance, and here, the point number 2. And these weights can be easily changed by the user, of course, and that brings about interactivity in this measurement. And, okay, having calculated all these measures of distance aggregated so far, we get to the point that we need to interpret numbers into not just only colors, but also into verbal concepts such as near or far. It is especially important because these concepts root in our typical human capabilities and preferences. For instance, when a route is 15 kilometers long and flat, we know that it takes almost 3 hours to walk this route, and we consider the destination as to be far, while a route 500 meters long just takes us less than 10 minutes of walking, so the destination is quite near for us. Using a mathematical method named fuzzy logics, we have interpreted distance measures into such verbal concepts and attributed them to the urban box, where people live, these closed polygons. As it was with the walkability itself, these gradients can be biased when different weights of importance are stated for attraction points, and that actually shows the polycentric structure of the neighborhoods. And we see a distance decay phenomenon, which is geographically very important, sometimes referred to as the first law of geography, that things are all related to one another, but things which are closer are more related. So, and this is modeled as a fuzzy membership function. And you can also see that effect that some authors are referring to as a 700, 800 meters or 10 minutes of walk as the maximum range of a neighborhood. And okay, here you can see the model as a structured flowchart made in a visual programming interface named Grasshopper. We're planning to publish the algorithm soon in a journal paper. And here are a list of references. And yeah, that's it. I thank you very much for your attention. And please provide me with your feedback on this work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for this well-presented concept, Pirous.
Thank you.
The presenter again. One second that I share my desktop. I do have a problem with my computer being a bit slow. Pirous, thank you very much. Do we have a question by our experts? Pekka, we do. If I may pose you this question, Pirous.
Yes, sure.
Usually walking, cycling and PT are regarded as sustainable modes of traffic. To increase their share in model split, usually you need the urban design measures like improving the quality of walking. Can you use your methods in comparing different urban design solutions? Can you formulate an average walkability index for an area? Or have you done it already? Do you then use different weights for different attractions?
Yes, that.
But can you answer, Pirous?
Yes. That was actually the main intention behind making this model. It was actually an integral part of a computational design process in which we wanted to actually densify. We were to propose a method for densification of an existing neighborhood according to a measure of walkability. So it was actually based on a straightforward assumption that the more walkable, the better that place is to be densified. So yeah, of course we can come up with numbers and figures as a walkability index. And of course, those things, as I explained in the last slide, can be interpreted into verbal concepts such as near or far. And that can form a solid basis for actually design or redevelopment of either an existing neighborhood or a new urban neighborhood. That's our plan. But yeah.
Okay, you still have some way to go in developing and fine-tuning the model. But do you already include an assessment of the quality and safety of the walking routes?
Oh no, that I've made as a footnote on the first page, so hope people can download the document and see. And in that I've explained that we are not considering things such as safety of the routes and how pleasing it is to walk a certain route because of some features like greenery or things like that. What we're measuring as walkability is basically the potential of walkability, so to say, because we just take into account the metric distance and the topographic features. And of course, things like safety and greenery and all kinds of attractive things, like, for instance, if somebody prefers to walk across a river or things like that, they may actually affect the actual choice of a person who is going to walk a certain route. But these things we consider as to be the basic things that we need to measure first of all.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is for a next development stage. Thank you very much, Pirous. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
the question.
Thank you.
We are going to try to bring in Nico again. I have seen that Nico is with us. He is connected. We just made him the presenter. That means that he can tell his computer to share his desktop. Let's see whether it works now. Nico, are you there?
What should I... There's no thing to click yet. Can you see anything, or...?
No, you first have to tell the computer to share your desktop. It may be so that the WebEx page is covering the whole of your computer screen. What you can do is take your cursor, go to the top of that page and drag it down a bit so that maybe what's now behind it becomes visible. You know what I mean?
I found it.
Found
Goed
it,
Nico.
right?
Zie je wel. Prima.
You see your screen?
All right. Okay. Thank you for waiting, and apologies for the mix-up. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Nico Tilly, working for Delft University, doing my PhD in livable fossil energy-free cities, and I also do my studies in the city of Rotterdam, and there we use a lot of indicator tools to actually accelerate sustainable development. So what we did in the past few years is that we said, look, we want to become this sustainable, attractive city, but first let us decide to know how do we perform ourselves. So what is the benchmark where we are standing as a city? Because if you can't measure what we are doing, we can't manage it in a way. It's nothing different than kids going to school and getting their marks, but that's an easy thing going on. So what we first did was we got flooded by demand from organizations to give data about city rankings and to see where Rotterdam was standing in this way. So what we first did is actually make a comparison between many city rankings around, like here the Quality of Life Index, the Livability Index, the Green Lane Index, and all these kind of the Siemens Green City Index, the European Green Capital, etc. So what we did, we defined 20 studies, and 12 of them we found interesting enough, or they provided us actually with enough data to be used in a study. So it ranges from rankings worldwide to rankings in the Netherlands. And actually what we did, we looked at the high scores in each ranking. And what we see down here below is some cities which quite often are in the high rankings, like Portland, San Francisco, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Vancouver, Helsinki, and many others, Vienna. And we said, okay, what are these cities doing and how do they perform overall in these rankings? But also we ask ourselves the question, why do we get involved in rankings as a city? Well, first of all, the main issue was that we want to have feedback on the policies we are doing. So if we have a policy, is it sorting effect? Is it having the effect we want? Because for us it's a kind of learning tool. Another thing is that if we score well on a certain ranking as a city or score bad on a certain ranking, it can actually give us data or when we apply for money, we can say, look, we did so-and-so in these rankings, so please can you help us with that, or can you actually give money to be even better? And also sometimes it's of course just for good press, because many of these rankings do very well in communication. So when it's in the newspaper it says, look, we scored fourth on this ranking, then it helps the city a bit. But the last thing is a bit, well, it's not very scientific, but it's a fact of life. We actually deal with in the city. So one of the rankings we joined was the Siemens Green City Index, and it deals with a lot of planet issues, as I call them, like energy, buildings, transport, and all the environmental aspects. Well, we didn't do too well on CO2 and energy. That's because we have many oil refineries in the port. But anyway, it's just... so when we look at the Green City Index score, we scored number 13 out of 30 for land use as well. But for instance, when we look at European Green Capital, and it's in 2014, we scored number 4 and number 1 for land use among 30 other cities. So it's very difficult to compare these rankings. It's a bit of apple and pears, and we've seen in previous presentations that this is the case. So one of the ranking systems we came across was actually the Global Cities Indicator Facility from University of Toronto and United Nations and World Bank. And actually it's because we liked it because it's not a ranking. It's a tool which helps us to look at our own policy and to see if we are doing well. Overall, we compared all the rankings. We looked at the top 3 cities and what they were doing well, and we see that they do well in economy, green buildings, public transport and biking, energy, waste recycling, etc. You can see on the list. What's often missing is the time frame and perseverance, the flexibility and climate adaptation, governance issues, the use of local potentials like renewable energy potentials. The indirect impacts of consumption is often missing, like consumer goods and food, so like the footprint analysis. And it's difficult to compare aspects. Also, there's no indicator evolution. So if we have a city ranking and it's difficult to get often the data back from these ranking organizations because we have to pay a lot of money for them. So there's no feedback if the indicator they use is right or is useful for us. And often weighing is a black box. It's quite possible that they use the number of green buildings in the city to actually say that the city does better in energy performance than another city. So which doesn't make sense in many cases. And we found a lot of these issues being dealt with in this Global Cities Indicators Facility, but also European Green Cities, Green Capital helped, Siemens Green City Index. They were all helpful, but we are still looking for a good level of detail there. So what we actually did, we got many questions from ranking systems, but also from BREEAM, LEED, and local assessment tools for areas. And actually the people who work in the GIS department, they actually got a bit crazy because of all the different questions for data. So what we said, we have this question for, let's say, energy, and we now said, let's not gather the information just for the city or one big area, but on the smallest pixel possible. As you can see here, just imagine they are small pixels. So when there is a new question for this part of the city, we can answer it. But also if there's a question for another part of the city, because we have gathered the information on the smallest pixel possible. So this was a first step in making the lists, the indicators, which are usually just numbers, make them spatial. And that's what we did. We actually used the GCIF indicators, but we can use any indicator to actually map it on the city of Rotterdam on a small pixel. So instead of having a number for a neighborhood, for instance, a 4 for energy in a certain neighborhood, we now have pixels. So we don't want to know if it's a 4 in a certain neighborhood. No, we want to know which blocks are doing well and which are doing bad. So what is the 2 and what is the 10? So then it helps actually urban planners, spatial planners, to do something with this information. Well, we just prepared some maps. I won't go into detail too much on them, but just to show you what we've done with usually just indicator lists in numbers or percentages. Sometimes the outcome of ranking system is if you add 10% more green area to your city, you will improve much more. But then the question is, where do you put this green infrastructure? Do you put it near existing parks or make a new network? These are basic questions we try to answer by making these data spatial. So one of the things is that in stakeholder meetings, we had these maps on the table, but it didn't work really well with 40 maps on the table. So we provided a kind of interface, like here are all the indicators present we use, and we just showed with a traffic light system which indicators score well in the neighborhood and which score really bad. And this way we had a simple tool, and it's used more often, these spider diagrams, to actually use in stakeholder approaches. So for instance, here we are the government, we have the external stakeholders and the project, and we have then coalitions formed around the project to make actions and to monitor it. But now we say, okay, let's put in the resilience profile or the sustainability profile we've made and actually use it in this project so that we have a kind of an information-based system going on. So one of the themes and results out of these was, for instance, that we have the water system in Rotterdam here, which these are the problematic areas. Zooming in on this area, we actually see that these blocks are the problem. and we can say, okay, there's a water problem and a recreation shortage, so why not put in a water garden and a water square? So it helps us to actually make policy better. The same with energy. We looked at energy use, income level, and energy poverty, and then, okay, what solution goes with it? So this is the way we actually try to use the indicators. Another issue is that, for instance, in an open process and decision making, some people said, well, for instance, about densification, you can't densify in a certain area because of noise levels. With this information at the table, we now can say, well, it's a wrong conclusion. We should say, look where there's asphalt or cobblestones, because it influences the noise levels. Then look if there's traffic or no traffic. What is the speed limit, and what are the noise levels which go together with this? And then we can say something about densification. So it gives us the buttons to actually switch and to turn on for decision makers in these processes. So the next step is to go from neighborhood level to city level, so that we have actually a tool to see where we can put our money and our effort in the city to where it's needed in a way. So the follow-up is actually, I'll just mention this one, to actually use also new indicators which show also the potential, and localized resilience indicators, because that is often missing. So a new indicator groups could be about energy, food, and water. Like here, the energy potential mapping of Andy van der Dobbelsteen, it's now used in the city, but it's not at all in ranking systems, because they don't have the feedback loop yet. But also resilience mapping is something we should take a note of, because a resilient city for us is not just a city which deals with floods and drought, but also that it can count on local structures to fall back upon when there is something happening. So that also counts for food, materials, water, but also for traffic, etc. So for instance here, if you have a central energy system and something fails, this will happen. If you have a more diverse system, this will happen, and you end up with a system which can fall back upon a certain basic local system. So the same you have with dikes in the Netherlands. If one dike breaks, not the whole area of the Randstad is being flooded, but smaller areas, pockets are actually flooded. So this is a historical thing, but it still makes the area more resilient to flooding. The same is for energy. We try to do now is that we don't depend on one central big grid system when it fails it and then everything is lost, but actually go into a patchwork of central and decentral, so that we have a mix of different electricity sources, so towards a mix of energy sources. So in a way, this is what I want to present. Thank you very much for your attention. Yeah.
Happy that you were able to log in at the end, otherwise we would have missed a, I think, very interesting presentation. We have a question again by Pekka.
Mm-hmm.
And now suddenly my screen changed. I'll share my own screen and show the proper slide. 1 second, Nico. In the meantime, I will read the question by Pekka. It's a very nice... wait a minute. Now I'm suddenly sharing my screen again, which is great, but I lost my question. I've got it again. Very nice spider graphs and GIS analysis. The ranking lists of cities seem to be very popular, but perhaps not so scientifically founded. Do you have ideas on how we could increase the objectivity of the ranking lists? Have you been able to utilize the mapping results in real life in local urban planning?
Mm-hmm.
2 questions.
Yeah. So to start with the last one, the mapping system we are now using in Rotterdam, and we have used it in 5 processes in the city. So really for development tools, and it's used in the International Architecture Biennale Rotterdam entry of the city. So we are now testing it, and it's really working well, because when people see an Excel sheet, they can understand the spider diagram very quickly because of the red, orange, and blue, of course. and they can understand the map very quickly, but they can't understand a big Excel sheet. So it really works very well, and it is an immediate link to urban planning and to action lists in the neighborhood. So that works very well. The scientific part of the ranking systems, I agree completely. I mean, that was one of the reasons I started looking into these things, because some of it is just, well, based on opinions and other things and bad research, while others do a pretty good job, I must say. So it's a mix of everything. But what we try to do now is really, well, what I like about this UN and World Bank initiative is that it tries to make it to that we use the same indicators. And for us as a city, it's not about, okay, it's nice to compare things, but it should be scientifically founded. So there's still a lot of work to be done there. So yeah, I would say it's a nice topic for research, but we try to be as objective as possible in there. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer, Nico. We have one more question for each of the presenters. And because that's easiest, Nico, shall we start with a second question for you?
Yes, please.
Wart Mandersloot from TNO.
Yes.
He says, it's a nice presentation, and rightly you mentioned resilience. The question,
Mm-hmm.
can you also take durability into account, including future demographic changes expected in the area? So can you take long-term durability into account?
Yeah, well, let's say that is only possible when we use scenario planning. And for now, we have only done that for water, for climate adaptation studies, and for energy studies. We are starting to do it, but I must say it's just a little bits we have studied there so far. So I would say the scenario planning issue here is, well, as I said, we're just scratching the surface there. So yes, for a small bit, but it's a very interesting topic. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nico. My compliments also for the spider graph. I think that with assessment models like this, to be scientifically correct is important, but to be able to communicate with decision makers is as important. And you are providing some interesting tools there.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
If you allow me, I have some more questions. One for Marcelo and Flavio.
Okay.
You mentioned as a fourth dimension of the eco-village concept, in addition to social, economic, and social sustainability, the spirituality. Can you elaborate a little bit on why that is important?
Okay, that's a good question. I think Flavio will like it. I'll just translate it to him. Ele está perguntando a respeito da quarta dimensão que você citou na Ecovila de espiritualidade. Ele quer saber o que isso é para você e por que você considera isso importante.
A questão da espiritualidade ela tem a ver com o respeito e a aceitação da diversidade. Quando a gente coloca a espiritualidade, ele envolve todas as diferentes crenças.
So he's saying that spirituality in the eco-village concept is related to diversity, to respect and acceptance of diversity and of different beliefs. It's not related to religion. It's more related to a harmonious, how can I put it, a harmonious living between all the members regarding acceptance and just accepting diversity.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I agree personally, and I think this is a hugely important dimension to be added and to be made explicitly. How to include it in a model is somewhat difficult, but that's the challenge. Thank you, Flavio. Thank you, Marcella. I have one more question for Pirous, which is on the walkability assessment. Pirous, can you give an example of how we can use this model in practice? In what kind of a practice, in what kind of a situation can we use this?
Yeah, the initial goal, as I mentioned, was to use it for a process of densification. So we wanted to see where there is a potential for densification. Of course, such a walkability measure can be a factor, only one factor used for the densification. But if we measure it objectively, then it forms a basis for that densification process. For instance, if the neighborhood is to grow sustainably or in a green manner, then it is important that the new inhabitants would have a reasonable pedestrian access to the vital services that they need on an everyday basis. So this is one example, and yeah, actually that's the example I started with, and still I'm working on that densification, because I've been working on this computational design processes for densification and also for diversification of land uses within the neighborhood. So it matters. I've been working on a process, combined densification and diversification, and I'm going to integrate it in that process. And the ultimate goal is to publish all these tools in a tool suite for what we call it configurative design. So simply designing the relation between things, between designing the things themselves.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pirous. I
You're
can give
welcome.
you one personal recommendation. I think there's a lot of scientific potential in the model, but it may become very complicated. Feel inspired by the presentation of Nico, who shows how important it is to maybe be less scientific, but be able to communicate and present things. And then it will increase the word enormously. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
For all attendees, I'm going to a closing of this event. Before giving my final remarks, a couple of thanks. I want to thank Ton Heijblom from the CIB Secretariat for his technical support. I want to thank Francis Wong from Hong Kong for presenting his concept of the CIB student chapter. If there are students who feel, let's say, inspired to aim for a CIB student chapter, get in touch with us. We'll give you all possible support. I want to thank especially Pekka Latti from VTT, who, although struck by the flu, made his presentation and posed his questions. Thank you, Pekka, and all the best for the coming days. And I want to thank especially our three student presenters, Nico, Marcelo, and Jose, and Pirous. Excellent presentations, guys. All the best for your study. To all our attendees, do know that you still can ask questions via the CIB Secretariat. We will forward them. Do know that as soon as possible, although it will be immediately after the Christmas period, we will inform you about where the recordings of this webinar and of the separate presentations and of the other three webinars and their presentations will be available. If you do want to be informed on such initiatives by CIB on webinars or regular conferences, or if you do want to be informed about often free downloadable recent publications, do subscribe to the CIB monthly newsletter. We will send you an email providing you with information on how to do that. It is free, it is informative. And I want to thank all attendees for staying with us. I hope you enjoyed the presentations, at least I did. We'll come to a proper conclusion and summary of all the four webinars as soon as possible. And I wish you all the best for the coming season, including Christmas or whatever is your argument for having a season in your part of the world. Thank you very much, and I herewith close this fourth webinar.